The old farmer, standing inside Judge Judy's courtroom, looked like he hadn't slept properly in months. His faded denim jacket hung loosely over his thin shoulders, dirt still trapped beneath his fingernails, like he had come straight from the fields without even thinking about how he looked. But the thing that made the entire courtroom uneasy wasn't his clothes. It was the way his hands kept shaking every time somebody mentioned the word land. Because for Walter Briggs, that land was not property. It was 43 years of his life. It was his dead wife's garden. It was the barn where his son learned to walk before he died in a tractor accident at 19. And less than 20 minutes after the hearing began, Judge Judy would uncover a hidden contract clause so disturbing, so intentionally deceptive, that the entire courtroom would suddenly realize this case had never been about business. It was about greed disguised as opportunity. Walter Briggs was 68 years old and looked older. Years of drought, debt, and physical labor had carved exhaustion permanently into his face. Across from him sat Gavin Pierce, a sharply dressed real estate investor from Dallas, wearing a Navy designer suit and a silver watch that probably cost more than Walter's truck. Gavin looked calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that often hides calculation. He leaned back comfortably while Walter stood stiffly at the plaintiff's podium, holding a weathered folder against his chest, like it contained his entire future. Judge Judy glanced at the paperwork in front of her. Walter was suing Gavin for fraud and breach of agreement after signing a contract that nearly transferred ownership of his 200-acre family farm to Gavin's development company for less than a quarter of its actual value. Gavin immediately spoke first. "Your Honor, Mr. Briggs signed the paperwork willingly." "This is just seller's remorse." Walter looked down instantly. That reaction mattered, because manipulative businessmen often frame emotional devastation as personal weakness. Gavin wasn't just defending the contract. He was trying to make Walter look foolish before the facts even came out. Judge Judy noticed it immediately. "Nobody asked you yet," she said sharply. The courtroom got quiet. Gavin adjusted his tie with a tight smile. "Of course." Walter cleared his throat softly. "Mom, I thought I was signing a temporary loan agreement." Judge Judy looked up. "You thought?" Walter nodded slowly. "My farm had 2 bad seasons. I was behind on taxes. Mr. Pierce said he could help me save the property until harvest." Gavin interrupted quickly. "That's not what I said." Too quickly. Too defensive, another psychological tell. Honest people usually correct facts calmly. Manipulators panic when the emotional framing starts shifting away from them. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Pierce, if you interrupt again, you'll regret it." Gavin leaned back again, but the confidence in his posture had started cracking just slightly around the edges. Walter opened his folder carefully. Inside were old photographs of the farm, tax notices, handwritten notes, and finally the contract itself. His fingers trembled while handing the papers to the bailiff. "I only finished 8th grade, he admitted quietly. "My wife handled paperwork before she passed." The courtroom suddenly felt heavier after that sentence. Judge Judy read silently for nearly 30 seconds. Then she stopped. Her expression changed. "Mr. Briggs," she said slowly, "did anybody explain Clause 14 to you?" Walter blinked. "No, Mom." Gavin immediately jumped in again. He had every opportunity to read the agreement. Judge Judy ignored him completely. Clause 14 transfers full ownership of the property if repayment deadlines are missed by more than 10 days. Walter looked genuinely stunned. "Ownership?" Gavin sighed dramatically. "That's how contracts work." But here's where things got disturbing. Judge Judy flipped another page and noticed something buried deep in the agreement. The repayment date had been set only 3 weeks after signing, even though the harvest Walter needed for repayment wouldn't happen for another 2 months. The courtroom suddenly went silent. Judge Judy looked directly at Gavin now. You created a deadline he could never realistically meet. Gavin shifted slightly in his chair. That's standard business risk. Notice the language manipulators use when cornered. They remove emotion completely. They replace suffering with terms like risk, business, or procedure. It psychologically distances them from guilt. But Judge Judy wasn't buying any of it. Walter quietly wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I just wanted enough time to save the farm. Judge Judy continued reading. Then she found something else. A series of emails between Gavin and a commercial developer in Houston discussing future luxury resort construction on Walter's land before the contract had even been signed. And then, silence. Judge Judy slowly lowered the papers. You were already planning to sell this farm before he ever missed a payment. Gavin's calm expression disappeared for the first time. It was just preliminary discussion. Walter looked confused. Resort? Judge Judy's voice sharpened. Mr. Pierce negotiated a potential resort development deal on your property before you even signed the agreement. Audible gasps moved through the courtroom. Walter's face collapsed emotionally right there. Not anger at first. Betrayal. Deep betrayal. Because suddenly he realized this man had never intended to help him. The loan was bait. The farm was always the target. Gavin tried regaining control immediately. Your Honor, business opportunities happen all the time. Judge Judy leaned forward. Not when you deliberately engineer failure into the contract. The audience murmured loudly now. Walter stared down at the table, shaking his head slowly, like his brain was still trying to process how close he had come to losing everything. Then Judge Judy noticed one final detail. Walter's repayment attempt had actually arrived only 4 days late. But Gavin had intentionally delayed processing the payment by holding the certified check for nearly a week before officially recording it. The courtroom erupted. Gavin immediately started talking over everyone. That's not what happened. Judge Judy snapped instantly. Stop talking. Complete silence. Even Gavin froze. Judge Judy held up the certified mail records. The check arrived on June 4th. Your office didn't process it until June 11th. Gavin swallowed hard. Administrative delay. Judge Judy looked disgusted. Administrative greed. That single sentence changed the entire room, because now everyone understood exactly what they were looking at. This wasn't a misunderstanding between a farmer and an investor. This was a calculated trap designed to steal generational land from an elderly man under financial pressure. Walter finally broke emotionally. My father built that barn with his own hands. His voice cracked hard. My wife's buried under the oak tree behind the house. The courtroom fell completely silent again. Even audience members looked emotional now. Gavin stared down at the desk, avoiding eye contact for the first time all day. Notice how confidence collapses once the human cost becomes impossible to ignore. Earlier, Gavin spoke like a businessman. Now he looked like a man trying desperately not to appear guilty on national television. Judge Judy leaned back slowly. How much did the developers offer you? Gavin stayed silent. Answer me. $6 million. Gasps exploded through the courtroom. Walter looked physically dizzy hearing the number, $6 million. For land Gavin nearly stole from him over a temporary tax crisis. Judge Judy's face hardened completely now. You saw an elderly farmer struggling financially and tried turning his desperation into a real estate opportunity. Gavin muttered quietly, That's not fair. Judge Judy fired back instantly. Fair? You built a contract designed to fail before the man even signed it. The audience burst into applause before the bailiff quieted them down. Gavin's polished image was completely gone now. No confidence, no smooth business language, just panic. Judge Judy reviewed the evidence one final time before delivering judgment. This court finds the agreement unconscionable, deceptive, and intentionally predatory. Walter looked up slowly, almost afraid to hope. The attempted property transfer is void. Walter covered his mouth immediately as tears filled his eyes. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm awarding damages for legal fees and financial harm caused by this fraudulent agreement. Gavin looked stunned. You can't. I can, Judge Judy interrupted coldly, and I just did. Walter sat down slowly while crying quietly into his hands. Not dramatic crying, relief. The kind that comes after months of carrying fear alone. Judge Judy looked at him gently. Mr. Briggs, nobody gets to steal your family's history because you had a bad season. The courtroom erupted into applause again. Gavin couldn't even look up anymore, because the truth had completely destroyed the image he walked into court trying to protect. As Walter prepared to leave, Judge Judy stopped him one last time. Take care of that farm, she said softly. Walter nodded while wiping tears from his face. Yes, Mom. And honestly, that old farmer never really came to court just to save land. He came to save memory, legacy, family, and one greedy man almost took all of it away for profit. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe to Courtroom Evidence for more emotional courtroom documentaries where hidden greed gets exposed and justice finally speaks louder than power.